So our next chapter basically it starts with requirement planning, direction and review. So this is our preparation phase before our TI program basically starts, right? We will be finding the requirements that what all is being required via our threat intelligence program. We will be planning it, we will be directing it, and we'll be reviewing it in this particular chapter, right? So basically we will be starting with understanding the organizations current threat landscape. Then we'll be talking about like TI program requirement analysis, which we'll be doing, establishing the management support, building the threat intel team. So all these parts will be part of this particular chapter. So let's start with the basic one, the starting one. Identify the critical threats to the organization. So how you will be identifying the threats to the organization via doing the risk assessment, right? First of all, to identify the threats, doesn't you guys think that we should know that what are the assets to the organization? Until and unless we know that what we need to protect, no matter how much risk calculation we do, we will be in a null and void situation, right? Where we do not know that whether the calculated thing is correct or not. So you will be basically making your risk register over here. Basically, you will be having the list of your assets, then you will be prioritizing that particular assets, right? Prioritizing in what way, that which asset are most critical assets and most important assets to your organization. Then once you have prioritized that particular list of assets, you will be it won't be like that you are the single person who will be deciding it. It will be you will be taking it to the management will be taking it to the stakeholders, and all of them together will be coming to a common prioritized list, right, of the assets, that yes, these are the most critical assets. So on the basis of those critical assets, you will be checking the impact, right? That which asset is having the more impact to the organization if being compromised, right? So once you basically check the impact, you will be calculating the risk, right? Then you calculate the risk and then you will be prioritizing your assets accordingly, according to the risk and the impact which they are having on the organization. You will be prioritizing your assets on that particular basis, right? So that's how you will be identifying the critical threats to the organization, because the most critical asset, and with the most critical asset, the risk level and the impact to the organization will be deciding that which is the which asset is having the most critical threats, right? It can be a Windows XP, it can be a 2019 server. Then you will be assessing your organization's current security pressure posture. Current security pressure posture will be that where you guys are as of now working, right? What kind of security mechanisms you are having, where basically what kind of policies you are having, what kind of infrastructure for the security you are having, right? So you will be basically checking out that your current security posture, pressure posture basically means current security posture and pressure posture, these two are the different things. Pressure posture will be something which will be basically deriving that in a pressure situation, how basically your security systems will be working, or do you need a new type of security system. And current security, simple security posture will be your inline defenses which you have used, right? Like what all devices or inline defenses you are having. In this basically you will be checking that how much pressure the organization is facing from the hackers, like the attackers, and from the legal departments, from the stakeholders, from the customers, or how much attractive you are basically from your attackers. How often do you get attack threats from your attackers, right? And you will be finding the need of new security plan for your organization. Overall, this is what you will be doing in this particular part, right? Then assessing the current security teams, team structure and competencies. So there will be different teams. We have security operations, we have threat intel team, we have incident response team, we have forensics team. So we will be assessing every team. Like over here we are basically checking the people who are in this particular team, whether they do have the updated knowledge or not, whether they do have the ability, like in threat intel, whether they do have the ability to collect the threat intel from various sources or not, and the threat intel which they are collecting, whether it is relevant to the organization or not, whether it is important to the organization or not. So all these parts basically you will be checking for threat intel team. For security operations team, you can basically check that whether the detection controls or techniques which they are basically using, whether they are updating it on regular basis or not, whether they are using like sim tools or firewalls for gathering the intelligence or not. So any kind of vulnerability which is being given to them, whether they are able to like check that particular vulnerability or not, or whether is there any kind of like threats to the assets, or like they have basically done any kind of mistake in case of prioritizing the assets to the organization or not. So that you will be checking for security operations. From all the SOC team works, you will be checking out your human resource who are working in SOC team, their competencies, right? Then incident response team, as soon as the incident basically occurs, how basically they are responding to the incident, you will be checking that whether the incident is being escalated and elevated at the proper timings or not. You will be even checking that for the people who are working in your IR team, whether the entire documentation from the incidents is being done or not for lessons learned basically. And all these things basically you will be checking in incident response. And in vulnerability management, basically you will be checking whether there are vulnerability management controls or not, whether those controls are being updated on the regular basis or not, whether we do have some sort of policies or not. So all these things basically you will be checking in vulnerability management, right? Whether we do various different vulnerability assessment test or penetration testing test on regular basis or not, what how we basically patch those vulnerabilities, how we basically document those vulnerabilities, how these vulnerabilities are being shared and escalated. So all these will be the part of vulnerability management. So for every team, first of all, you will be checking that what the team basically requires, how they are working, right? Then current security infrastructure and operations, basically it will be including your sim tool. We all know that what is sim tool. Yesterday also we have discussed sim tool, isn't it? So this is the tool which is being used in your SOC, which basically performs real-time security operation centers functions like identify, monitor, record, audit, and analyze your entire security incidents, right? It will be basically 24/7 monitoring your entire infrastructure, right? Then we are having NGFW, next generation firewalls. Basically your next generation firewalls will be having advanced capabilities for detecting normal firewall, regular firewall. Basically how do they do work is they do work between the networks, or they do basically check for the packets and everything, right? But in next generation firewalls, they will be basically doing both type of, if we even if we just talk about a normal packet filter firewall, they will be filtering the packets. But in next generation firewalls, packet filtering will be done dynamically and strategically both. I'm just talking about next generation firewall for packet filters, right? And also they will be giving you the supports to like basically support to the VPNs, plus they will be giving you the support like some advanced supports. They will be having like advanced supports, like they can have data leakage preventions, DLPs being configured. They can have basically these prioritization and of alerts and prioritization of events being configured into them, so which makes them the next generation firewalls, right? They will be including your like antiviruses, they will be including your sandboxing, they will be including your, let's say, web application firewalls, load balancing, IDS IPS, or geolocation, geographic, to detect the geographical anomalies. All of them basically can be included in, like, these can be the few of the features of your next generation firewall, right? Then guys, we do have the gateway. Gateway is the entry and the exit node of one to network to different network. It can be from internal to external and external to internal, or any network to different network. We can have gateways, right? Then IDS IPS, these are the inline defensive which we basically do deploy it in order to detect and prevent the malicious traffic for us, right? Then we do have the endpoint solution. Have you basically heard about like one of the endpoint solution that is one of the good one? The one is from CrowdStrike, Falcon. We do have CrowdStrike, Falcon. This Microsoft Defender's ATP Advanced Threat Protection is again your endpoint solution. We can include Symantec's one. Then we can have from Checkpoint. There is one Sandblast, something like that from Checkpoint. You can use that one as well. So there are various different endpoint solutions. Basically, what is endpoint solution? First of all, endpoint solution is the term being derived by two different terms: endpoint protection and endpoint security. Endpoints basically are your end system, user system. It can be your workstation, it can be your laptops, your employees workstation, their laptops, your client's laptop, client systems. All the endpoints basically are known as, like, it can be your mobile phones, tablets, laptops, IoT devices, your wireless routers. All of these can be your endpoints, right? And then when we talk about endpoint security, so when we are talking about one of the software which will be providing the endpoint security to all of these type of devices, it sums up to the endpoint solution for our organization, right? So endpoint security is basically security of these devices, endpoint devices, which can be your client devices, right? Like the mobile phones, the tablets, or the laptops, or IoT devices, or anything like that, right? So that is your endpoint. And when we talk about endpoint security, security of these endpoints being done is basically known as endpoint security and endpoint protection, right? And then there are various companies which are giving us the tools to give the endpoint security, EPS, endpoint security solutions. Mostly you can consider them like earlier, as we use antivirus in every laptop, right? These days we do not use antivirus, instead we use endpoint security solutions, EPS, endpoint security solutions for our systems. Like one of the antivirus company, Kaspersky, is also providing endpoint security solution for a system, right? You can use these endpoint securities. Even McAfee is providing the endpoint security solutions. So those are your endpoint solutions. Then assess the risk of the identified threat. So once we have identified the threats, we will be checking that particular, the risk associated with that particular threat, right? Like how basically this threat can basically, up to which level it can damage to our organization, right? So why we will be assessing the risk with the identified threat? Because from this we will be able to identify that what we need to build to basically fight against this particular threat, right? So if we know that particular thing, that what we require to basically fight against this threat, we can basically drive our threat intelligence program in that particular direction, right? Where what we need to basically fight, it can be defined in our TI program, right? So that's why basically we basically will be finding the identifying the risk for the identified assets. Then guys, we are having the next one, that is your understanding the organization's current landscape. So after this particular slide, we can have basically another activity, right? So map out the organization's ideal target state. So what you will be doing is, over here, as I already mentioned, you will be basically assessing the existing operational capabilities and how these capabilities can be identified by the your threat actors and how they can disrupt it, right? So you will be finding the ideal target state. That means the places, most important places where attackers can basically target our organization, right? So that will be your map out your organization's ideal target state. You will be identifying your valuable assets. You will be value identifying the most critical assets to your organization. Also, you will be identifying the threats associated with those assets, those threats, tactics, techniques, procedures, those threats, active campaigns. All of these you will be basically finding it out, right? So once you find it out, you will be basically able to detect and prevent the type of threat to your organization, right? Then guys, we will be talking about the needs and requirements. Since we are talking about requirement analysis, we will be first of all talking about need of intelligence, why we need intelligence, right? So need of intelligence, then what intelligence basically requires, both of these things will be are being mentioned over here, right? So need of intelligence will be answering our question that why we need cyber threat intelligence in our organization, right? So once we give the answer to that, now what cyber threat intelligence will be needing from our organization in order to work for us, right? That will be our intelligence requirement. So need of intelligence will be identifying the threat intelligence by answering that what type of intelligence does the consumer needs, what does the intelligence, when does the intelligence show as the need to be delivered to the consumer, whether we need to deliver those intelligence in, let's say, in 1 month or just 1 week. So you will be basically finding the intelligence requirement that who are the possible adversaries to your organization, right? Like you will be identifying the types of threat actors who can attack you. In second part, you will be finding like what type of attack they are going to do. Like, is the organization well equipped for thwart botnet attacks? So you will be identifying the need that you will be checking the whether we can sustain a botnet attack or not, right? Then we have like what vulnerabilities exist in the infrastructure of the organization that is exploited frequently. So you will be basically identifying or like finding the vulnerabilities within the organization system or which might have basically the part of the or your organization's system failure, right? So like it can be a malware, it can be a virus or worm. So that will be more over the part for need for intelligence than intelligence requirement. Basically it will be something where you will be basically talking about who, why, what, when, and how, and where the aspects of threat intelligence are, right? So, who will be requiring your threat intelligence? Why they will be requiring your threat intelligence? What type of intelligence being required? How you will be sharing it, right? So, all these basically parts will be the part of intelligence requirements, right? Like why state-sponsored hackers or activists or cyber terrorists specifically target the organization, right? Understood, guys? Any doubts to this one? Anyone? Intelligence requirement and need of intelligence?